All right. Welcome everyone. Sorry we're starting a little bit later because I had some other stuff to do, but I am here now. Welcome to our reading of Things Fall Apart. We are actually doing chapter 8. If you had me today on Monday the 8th, that means we already went over chapter 7 and man, was it crazy. And if you watched the live read from Friday, yeah, a lot happened in chapter 7, and chapter 8 is basically following up. And actually, we are going to be creating those. We're going to be creating those slides as we go. So anything that I come up that I think is interesting, I'll put them on here. But we do have some questions that we have to answer. So let me pull those questions up. I hope that those of you who are following along have been, really applying the cultural insights that we've got from Okonkwo and the Igbo tribe to what's going on, because as we see the characters develop and how they struggle with their conflicts, I'm hoping that you're realizing it's not too different from how we deal with our conflicts, and maybe some of the problems that we have are similar. So we have our assignment for this week is to answer a couple of questions about chapter 7 and chapter 8, and I believe, let's take a look at the chapter 8 questions. There they are. So chapter 8. Oh, okay. Here's one question. So let me put these questions into the slides for you, and let's make it one of these slides. Yeah, because there's two questions. So questions from chapter 8, and of course, this isn't everything that we want you to consider, but this is just some really big ones. So we're going to try and answer these two questions. All right, these two questions in chapter 8, and let's see what happens there. Okay. If you are attending the live read, please feel free to ask any questions or put down any comments in the chat box. I'm more than happy to stop my read or help you think through this process, especially if you're not following along. All right, so please follow along with me. I'm going to turn off my music so we can focus now on the reading. Let's go. Chapter 8. Here's our notes. Chapter 8. Okonkwo did not taste any food for 2 days after the death of Ikemefuna. He drank palm wine from morning till night, and his eyes were red and fierce like the eyes of a rat when it was caught by the tail and dashed against the floor. Okay. I don't know about you, but when my eyes are red and fierce, it's usually an indicator that I was really angry or I was crying a lot. It says here that he hasn't eaten any food for 2 days, and he kept drinking alcohol, palm wine, from morning till night. Maybe that's another reason why his eyes are bloodshot, but I don't think he's taking this as well as he claims to have been, right? Remember, he just killed his son. He liked Ikemefuna. All right, he called his son Nwoye to sit with him in his obi, but the boy was afraid of him and slipped out of the hut as soon as he noticed him dozing. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be around my violent father, who I know killed my brother and who's also been drinking, so I'd also slip away. He did not sleep at night. He tried to think about Ikemefuna, but the more he tried, the more he thought about him. Once he got up from bed and walked about his compound, but he was so weak that his legs could hardly carry him. He felt like a drunken giant walking with the limbs of mosquito. Now and then a cold shiver descended on his head and spread down his body. On the third day he asked his second wife, Akwefi, to roast plantains for him. She prepared it the way he liked, with slices of oil bean and fish. "You have not eaten for 2 days," said his daughter Azinma when she brought the food to him. "You must finish this." She sat down and stretched her legs in front of her. Okonkwo ate the food absent-mindedly. She should have been a boy, he thought, as he looked at his 10-year-old daughter. He passed her a piece of fish. It looks like the only person that's helping Okonkwo really handle it is his daughter Azinma, and I think he really wants to relate to her, but he can't because she's a girl. He can only relate to boys and help them become men. It's like maybe it's like the women are in charge of taking care of the daughters and the men are in charge of taking care of the boys. And he wants to connect more with his daughter, but he can't because of that cultural separation. Go and bring me some cold water, he said. Azima rushed out of the hut, chewing the fish, and soon returned with a bowl of cool water from the earthen pot in her mother's hut. Okonkwo took the bowl from her and gulped the water down. He ate a few more pieces of plantain and pushed the dish aside. Bring me my bag, he asked, and Azima brought his goatskin bag from the far end of the hut. He searched in it for his snuff bottle. It was a deep bag and took almost the whole length of his arm. It contained other things apart from his snuff bottle. There was a drinking horn in it, and also a drinking gourd, and they knocked against each other as he searched. When he brought out the snuff bottle, he tapped it a few times against his kneecap before taking out some snuff on the left palm of his left hand. Then he remembered that he had not taken out his snuff spoon. He searched his bag again and brought out a small, flat ivory spoon with which he carried the brown snuff to his nostrils. Azima took the dish in one hand and the empty water bowl in the other and went back to her mother's hut. She should have been a boy, Okonkwo said to himself again. His mind went back to Ikemefuna and he shivered. If only he could find some work to do, he would be able to forget. But it was the season of rest between the harvest and the next planting season. The only work that men did at this time was covering the walls of their compounds with new palm fronds, and Okonkwo had already done that. He had finished it on the very day the locusts came, when he had worked on one side of the wall, and Ikemefuna and Nwoye on the other. Remember at the beginning of the last chapter, before the locusts showed up, he, Nwoye, and Ikemefuna were working on the wall. That was the last thing on his to-do list. And like, I don't know if you guys have dealt with like loss or trauma or something like that, but sometimes, actually a lot of times, keeping busy is a really, really good way to make sure that, you know, you get over it. It helps you take your mind off of the situation. If not busy, then you're just left with your thoughts. Okonkwo finished everything, and he's basically left with his thoughts. He needs something to distract him. And it sucks even worse because, like, the last thing he did do was with Nwoye and Ikemefuna, when Ikemefuna was still alive and when Nwoye still, like, looked at him as his dad. Yeah. When did you become a shivering old woman? Okonkwo asked himself. You, who are known in all the 9 villages for your valor in war. How can a man who has killed 5 men in battle fall to pieces because he has added a boy to their number? Okonkwo, you have become a woman indeed. He sprang to his feet, hung his goatskin bag on his shoulder, and went to visit his friend Obierka. Okay, this is what we're going to title Okonkwo in Grief. Expresses his sorrow through his inability to eat or function properly. Like, here are some quotes to support that. Number 1, he drank palm wine from morning till night. That's pretty intense, right? Yeah. Let's see. Ooh, Nwoye was afraid of him. We want to do that. He did not sleep at night. That's another one. So that's an example of him not functioning properly. He can't sleep at night. What's another one? He felt... This is really descriptive. I like this one. He felt like a drunken giant walking on with the limbs of a mosquito. And then even Azima says, you have not eaten for 2 days. So these are all examples of Okonkwo in grief. And then he says this. When did you become a shivering old woman? He hasn't really reconciled it with himself that he's sad about Ikemefuna. And this has to do with, you know, what does this mean? This is part of our question, right? What is Okonkwo's mood here? What do we learn about him based on how he talks about himself? So what does this say about Okonkwo? How does he think about himself? right. Cool. That's a good one. Neat. Let's start another one because now he's going to try something. Okay. He's going to try getting his mind off of things. He sprang to his feet, hung his goatskin bag on his shoulder, and went to visit his friend Obierka. Obierka was sitting outside under the shade of an orange tree, making thatches from leaves of the raffia palm. He exchanged greetings with Okonkwo and led the way into his obi. "I was coming over to see you as soon as I finished that thatch," he said, rubbing off the grains of sand that clung to his thighs. "Is it well?" Okonkwo asked. "Yes," replied Obierka. "My daughter's suitor is coming today, and I hope we will clinch the matter of the bride price. I want you to be there." Just then, Obierka's son, Maduka, remember Maduka is the guy who won the wrestling tournament, and they sang a song about him. So even though like there are some things that are very loosely related, they still come into play. So I hope you remember that short chapter 6 about the wrestling tournament. Just then, Obierka's son, Maduka, came into the obi from outside, greeted Okonkwo, and turned towards the compound. "Come and shake hands with me," Okonkwo said to the lad. "Your wrestling the other day gave me much happiness." The boy smiled, shook hands with Okonkwo, and went into the compound. "He will do great things," Okonkwo said. "If I had a son like him, I should be happy. I am worried about Nwoye. A bowl of pounded yams can throw him in a wrestling match. His 2 younger brothers are more promising, but I can tell you, Obierka, that my children do not resemble me. Where are the young suckers that will grow when the old banana tree dies? If Azima had been a boy, I would have been happier. She has the right spirit." "You worry yourself over nothing," said Obierka. "The children are still very young. Nwoye is old enough to impregnate a woman. At his age, I was already fending for myself. No, my friend, he is not too young. A chick that will grow into a cock can be spotted the very day it hatches. I have done my best to make Nwoye grow into a man, but there is too much of his mother in him." Too much of his grandfather, Obierka thought, but he did not say it. Yo, Okonkwo's issue with his pops, everyone knows about it. Everyone knows that, like, this is a sensitive topic. So he's not even going to bring up the fact, like, that we know Nwoye is a lot like his grandfather, Unoka. The same thought also came to Okonkwo's mind. Oh, Okonkwo knows too. Okonkwo knows. But he had long learned how to lay that ghost. Whenever the thought of his father's weakness and failure troubled him, he expelled it by thinking about his own strength and success. And so he did now. His mind went to his latest show of manliness. All right. Okonkwo vents to his friend Obierka. Okay, so Obierka is his friend, and Okonkwo needs to get his mind off of, like, the fact that he just killed his son. So he goes to visit his friend, and they talk about, like, Okonkwo explains why it's important to have a strong son. Where is it? He mentions it here. Where are the young suckers that will grow when the old banana tree dies? This is his quote. Sorry, I'm trying to get the formatting right so it looks a little neater for all of you. You can follow it along if you missed out. So this is what he says. Where are the young suckers that will grow when the old banana tree dies? He being like the old banana tree, like who's going to take over for him, right? So he's jealous of Obierka and his strong son Maduka. The guy who won the wrestling matches, right? All right, let's see. He's comparing himself to Nwoye. Oof. Don't you hate it? When I was your age, I had my own job and my own car, and I was able to pay off a loan on my house. Like, this is this toxic. I hate it. He started to compare Nwoye to himself, But remember, in Nwoye is growing up under completely different circumstances. Okonkwo had to like, start from the bottom and now we're here, right? But in Nwoye, like Okonkwo is kind of taking care of him. Plus, in Nwoye is a lot like his grandfather. So I think that's another important point. Both Okonkwo and Obierika know that Nwoye is like Unoka. And I heard some kids complaining that like all these names are starting to get them confused. Like, look, I'm starting to remember all your names, all right? Like 150 kids. You best remember like the 5 or 6 that are in here. Come on now. Both Okonkwo and Obierika know that Nwoye is like Unoka, his lazy grandfather. Ooh. But here's the thing, like, oh man, wait, hold on. Let me read on and then we'll go back to it, all right? Whenever the thought, let's put this in here. Okonkwo has ways to deal with thinking of his weak father. I like this. Whenever the thought of his father's weakness and failure troubled him, he expelled it by thinking of his own strength and success. And so he did now. His mind went to his latest show of manliness. He's got his own coping mechanism, yo. He comes up with his own stuff to deal with his trauma. He has his own coping mechanism. That's insane. I cannot understand why you refuse to come with... Oh, sorry. Okonkwo's voice. I cannot understand why you refuse to come with us to kill that boy, he asked Obierika. Because I did not want to, Obierika replied sharply. I had something better to do. You sound as if you question the authority and the decision of the Oracle, who said he should die. I do not. Why should I? But the Oracle did not ask me to carry out its decision. But someone had to do it. If we were all afraid of blood, it would not be done. And what do you think the Oracle would do then? You know very well, Okonkwo, that I am not afraid of blood. And if anyone tells you that I am, he is telling a lie. And let me tell you one thing, my friend. If I were you, I would have stayed home. What you have done will not please the earth. It is the kind of action for which the goddess wipes out whole families. The earth cannot punish me for obeying her messenger, Okonkwo said. A child's fingers are not scalded by a piece of hot yam, which its mother puts into its palm. This is true, Obierika agreed. But if the Oracle said that my son should be killed, I would neither dispute it, nor be the one to do it. Okay, so this, oh my god, this is an important argument. Okonkwo argues with Obierika about validity of his actions. So here's how this argument boils down, right? Okonkwo accuses Obierika of being a woman for not showing up. Okay? So he says, like, I cannot understand why you refuse to come with us to kill that boy. And remember, like, during the murder party, the group of men were making fun of the people who decide not to show up, the effeminate women who decide to show up. It seems like Obierika is one of those men who decided not to show up. But Obierika, he's kind of showing some wisdom here. He's like, look, I had no problem following the orders of the Oracle, but the Oracle did not say I had to kill him. The Oracle didn't say I had to go. So I didn't do anything. So Okonkwo is kind of like, he's venting again, right? It's like, why didn't you go? I went. Why didn't you go? And then, so he replies like, I have no problem with it. Saw no obligation. So he did not offend the Oracle, by not going. But he questions Okonkwo, like, why the hell did you go? Like, dude, like, one, someone told you not to go. And two, like, this is the kind of thing that pisses the gods off. Why would you do this? And Okonkwo, okay, so Obierka, he like, what is it? Wait, no. Not ask him to cure his son. Um, where is it? The oracle did not ask me to carry out the decision. There you go. So like even the oracle like condemned his son, he would not have gone to do it. Like no one said Okonkwo had to be there, and no one said Okonkwo had to do it. That's the thing. Okonkwo decided to do it. And here's where it gets me. Okonkwo is hiding behind like he's doing it because the oracle told him to. But that's a lie. We know why Okonkwo went, right? Why did Okonkwo go? So let me put that down in the Okonkwo hides behind the reasoning that the oracle said I should, so I went. But we know that's a lie. Why did he go? Okonkwo went because, and this goes back to his fatal flaw, he went because he was afraid of being seen as weak. And the thing is, like, Obierka is kind of pointing that out. It's like, look, I wouldn't have gone. I wouldn't have done it. The oracle didn't tell me to do it, so I wouldn't have done it. Why did you do it? And he's like, he's starting to get to Okonkwo, right? Because they have this argument. But fortunately, their argument is cut short by... I'm going to butcher these names, by the way, but I'm going to try anyway. Ofoedu. They would have gone on arguing had Ofoedu not just come in just then. It was clear from his twinkling eyes that he had important news, but it would be impolite to rush him. Obierka offered him a lobe of the kola nut he had broken with Okonkwo. Ofoedu ate slowly and talked about the locusts. When he finished his kola nut, he said, "The things that happen these days are very strange." "What has happened?" asked Okonkwo. "Do you know Ogbuefi Ndulue?" Ofoedu asked. "Ogbuefi Ndulue of Ire village," Okonkwo and Obierka said together. "He died this morning," said Ofoedu. "That is not strange. He is the oldest man in Ire. I think it's Ire, said Obierka. "You are right," Ofoedu agreed. "But you ought to ask why the drum has not beaten to tell Mofia of his death." "Why?" asked Obierka and Okonkwo together. "That is the strange part of it. You know his first wife who walks with a stick?" "Yes. She is called Ozoemena." "That is so," said Ofoedu. "Ozoemena, as you know, too old to attend Ndulue during his illness. His younger wives did that. When he died this morning, one of these women went to Ozoemena's hut and told her. She rose from her mat, took her stick, and walked over to the obi. She knelt on her knees and hands at the threshold and called her husband, who was laid on a mat. "Ogbuefi Ndulue," she called 3 times, and went back to her hut. When the youngest wife went to call her again to be present at the washing of the body, she found her lying on the mat, dead. "That is very strange indeed," said Okonkwo. "They will put off Ndulue's funeral until his wife has been buried." "That is why the drum has not been beaten to tell Mofia." "It was always said that Ndulue and Ozoemena had one mind," said Obierka. "I remember when I was a young boy, there was a song about them. He could not do anything without telling her." "I did not know that," said Okonkwo. "I thought he was a strong man in his youth." "He was indeed," said Ofoedu. Okonkwo shook his head doubtfully. Hold up. I don't know about you, but I've known plenty of people in my family who, they've gotten old together, couples who have gotten old together and they died. And when one dies, the other dies soon after. It's like, I don't know, maybe it's like the power of love or something that keeps couples alive together until one passes away, then the other passes away. I'm not sure if you've experienced that in your family, but I have. And it seems like so. It seems like this is the situation. They talk about Ogbuefi, the one who passed away. And let's put the old one, just so that we know, because there's going to be a couple people dying in this novel. All right? They talk of Ogbuefi. So, Ogbuefi Dulue dies, but the drums have not sounded for him. And the issue is, shortly after his death, his first and eldest wife dies too, cannot be buried until she is buried first. Let's see, who's the one? Obierka comments on Indulue and Ozoemena having one mind. Okay, so remember, this is a man and a woman having one mind. Okonkwo doubts this. This is a show of Indulue's strength. Because what does Okonkwo believe about women? That they are not as strong as men. So if this man is so tied to a woman, how could he be strong? That's Okonkwo's like, there's this term, it's called misogynistic. I think he's showing his misogyny. Okonkwo is showing a bit. I mean, like, you know, we've seen so many examples of this already. You might as well throw some more. Misogyny. That's a term that you should be aware of, especially in today's day and age, where you are mistreating of women. You see yourself as superior. I hate misogynists. Sorry, I don't use the word hate very much, but I hate haters. And misogyny are people who hate women. So Okonkwo seems he hates women, not because necessarily he thinks like they are to be hated, but because he thinks like men are just genuinely stronger and men should be stronger. That's Okonkwo. And if you want an example of misogyny, take a look at the comment section of the people who were commenting on the picture of the first NFL head ref that was female. Dear God, I was never... Not a good way to start the day. All right, so check that out. But, you know, that's for like the three of you who will actually watch this VOD or who are actually paying attention. So it's cool. All right, but just a little thing for you to consider. All right, let's continue. Here we go. He led Umofia to war in those days, so Obierka. Okonkwo was beginning to feel like his old self again. All that he required was something to occupy his mind. If he had killed Ikemefuna during the busy planting season or harvesting, it would not have been so bad. His mind would have been centered on his work. Okonkwo was not a man of thought, but of action. This is important. I don't know where I'm going to put this, but you know what? Let me put it here. That is a quote. Okonkwo was not a man of thought, but of action. And I wonder how many of you can relate. How many of you would rather do something rather than think about something? Judging off of your grades and the fact that I ask you to do something, doesn't look like a lot of you want to do anything. But who knows? Maybe that's just for academics, because it does require thinking. Anyways, soon after Ofwedu left, Okonkwo took up his goatskin bag to go. I must go home to tap my palm trees for the afternoon, he said. Who taps your tall trees for you? asked Obierka. Umezulike, replied Okonkwo. Sometimes I wish I had not taken the Ozo title, said Obierka. It wounds my heart to see these young men killing palm trees in the name of tapping. It is so indeed, Okonkwo agreed, but the law of the land must be obeyed. Whoa! More culture. We're going to learn about this. I don't know how we got that law, said Obierka. In many other clans, a man of title is not forbidden to climb the palm tree. Here, we say he cannot climb the tall tree, but he can tap the short one standing on the ground. It is like Dimarangana, who would not lend his knife for cutting up dog meat because the dog was taboo to him, but offered to use his teeth. I think it is good that our clan holds the Ozo title in high esteem, said Okonkwo. In those other clans you speak of, Ozo is so low that every beggar takes it. I was only speaking in jest, said Obierka. In Abame and Aninta, the title is worth less than 2 cowries. Every man wears the thread of title on his ankle, and does not lose it even if he steals. They have indeed soiled the name of Ozo, said Okonkwo as he rose to go. It will not be very long now before my in-laws come, said Obierka. I shall return very soon, said Okonkwo, looking at the position of the sun. Okay, new slide. They talk about the culture of the Ozo. So remember, Ozo, a title one gets in a tribe that makes you an elder. Remember, Okonkwo was an Ozo. Remember, one of the conflicts earlier on is, I think Obierka was Unoka's friend. Remember, Obierka would come by and ask Unoka to pay him back so that he can take the title of Ozo and all that. So, a title Ozo, I guess, in Umofia. To be an Ozo means you don't get to tap your tall palm trees. Someone else has to do it. In other tribes, it doesn't matter. Okonkwo and Obierka discuss this cultural difference between their village and other villages. And that's the importance of the Ozo title and how some people it doesn't mean anything. So that would be if every one of my students were were pleasure to have in class. If everyone was pleasure to have in class, so then you don't really feel special for getting that comment anymore, right? That's why I try to reserve it for just the really, really good kids. It's not too hard to reserve that either. Anyways, let's continue with the reading. So Okonkwo goes home to tap his palm trees, and he comes back because Obierka is marrying his daughter. So his daughter's getting married, and he wants Okonkwo there to help discuss the bride price. Remember, this happened before, Okonkwo couldn't pay the bride price for Akwafi. And we talked a little bit about, the culture of having to pay to marry someone. Well, they're going to do this. And again, they're going to talk about a cultural difference, okay? So Okonkwo comes back. There were 7 men in Obierka's hut when Okonkwo returned. The suitor was a young man of about 25, and with him were his father and uncle. On Obierka's side were his 2 elder brothers and Maduka, his 16-year-old son. Sorry, his daughter is not getting married. His son Maduka is getting married. His son, 16 years old, of which many of you, I believe, are 16 years old. How would you like to get married right now? Ask Akueke's mother to send us some kola nuts, said Obierka to his son. Maduka vanished into the compound like lightning. The conversation at once centered on him, and everybody agreed that he was as sharp as a razor. I sometimes think he is too sharp, said Obierka, somewhat indulgently. He hardly ever walks. He is always in a hurry. If you are sending him on an errand, he flies away before he has heard half of the message. You are very much like that yourself, said his eldest brother. As our people say, when mother cow is chewing grass, its young ones watch its mouth. Maduka has been watching your mouth. Ooh, 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 that stings. That stings. Oh my god, that stings. Okay, why does this sting? All right, so his elder brother is like, you know why he's such a good son? Because he's been watching what you do, right? Like father, like son. Oh man, Okonkwo must be like, God dang it. How did I get Nwoye? And if it were really like father, like son, Nwoye would be like the fiercest guy in the tribe, right? But no, he's like Unoka. As he was speaking, the boy returned, followed by Akueke, his half-sister, carrying a wooden dish with 3 kola nuts and alligator pepper. She gave the dish to his father's eldest brother and then shook hands, very shyly, with her suitor and his relatives. Nope, I was right. He's marrying off his daughter, not Maduka. Not Maduka. He's marrying off his sister, or Obierka is marrying off his daughter and has to negotiate a bride price. She was about 16. Ladies in my class who are 16 or around the age of 16, how would you like to be married off right now? Her suitor and his relatives surveyed her young body with expert eyes as if to assure themselves that she was beautiful and ripe. What an experience, huh? To be assessed and valued just by the look of your body. Welcome to Las Vegas. She wore a coiffure, which was done up into a crest in the middle of the head. Camwood was rubbed lightly into her skin, and all over her body were black patterns drawn with uli. She wore a black necklace, which hung down in 3 coils just above her full, succulent breasts. On her arms were red and yellow bangles, and on her waist were 4 or 5 rows of jigida, or waist beads. Yo, she's done up. She's done up. Like, you know, if you're going to sell your daughter, you might as well make her look good, right? Man, I love this culture, don't you? When she had shaken hands, or rather held out her hand to be shaken, she returned to her mother's hut to help with the cooking. Remove your jigida first, her mother warned as she moved near the fireplace to bring the pestle resting against the wall. Every day I tell you that jigida and fire are not friends, but you will never hear. You grew your ears for decoration, not for hearing. One of these days, your jigida will catch fire on your waist, and then you will know. Akueke moved to the other end of the hut and began to remove the waist beads. It had to be done slowly and carefully, taking each string separately, else it would break and the 1,000 tiny rings would have to be strung together again. She rubbed each string downward with her palms until it pressed the buttocks and slipped down to the floor around her feet. The men in the obi had already begun to drink the palm wine which Akueke's suitor had brought. It was a very good wine and powerful, for in spite of the palm fruit hung across the mouth of the pot to restrain the lively liquor, white foam rose and spilled over. That wine is the work of a good tapper, said Okonkwo. The young suitor, whose name was Ibe, smiled broadly and said to his father, Do you hear that? He then said to the others, He will never admit that I am a good tapper. He tapped 3 of my best palm trees to death, said his father, Ukegbu. That was about 5 years ago, said Ibe, who had begun to pour out the wine, before I learned how to tap. He filled the first horn and gave to his father. Then he poured out for the others. Okonkwo brought out his big horn from the goatskin bag, blew into it to remove any dust that might be there, and gave it to Ibe to fill. As the men drank, they talked about everything except the thing for which they had gathered. See, this is part of their culture. They're not very direct. They like to do business after all of the, small talk. It was only after the pot had been emptied that the suitor's father cleared his voice and announced the object of their visit. Obierka then presented to him a small bundle of short broomsticks. Okegbu counted them. They are 30? He asked. Obierka nodded in agreement. We are at last getting somewhere, Ukegbu said, and then turning to his brother and his son, he said, Let us go out and whisper together. The 3 rose and went outside. When they returned, Ukegbu handed the bundle of sticks back to Obierka. He counted them. Instead of 30, there were now only 15. Bro, they're haggling. They're haggling for the price of this daughter. At first, Obierka wants 30 I guess 30 broomsticks, and now they're firing back with the offer of 15 broomsticks. He counted them. Instead of 30, there were now only 15. He passed them over to his eldest brother, Machi, who also counted them, and said, "We had not thought to go below 30, but as the dog said, if I fall down for you and you fall down for me, it is play. Marriage should be a play and not a fight, and so we are falling down again." He then added 10 sticks to the 15, so instead of 15, it's now back to 25. If anyone who's been to the swap meet, and has actually tried to buy anything, you got to haggle. You got to haggle. He then added 10 sticks to the 15 and gave the bundle to Ukegbu. In this way, Akueke's bride price was finally settled at 20 bags of cowries. It was already dusk when the two parties came to this agreement. "Go and tell Akueke's mother that we have finished," Obierka said to his son Maduka. Almost immediately, the women came in with a big bowl of fufu. Obierka's second wife followed with a pot of soup, and Maduka brought in a pot of palm wine. As the men ate and drank palm wine, they talked about the customs of their neighbors. Okay, so another big thing. Oh, someone's watching. Who's watching? Hello. Hey, it's Haiti. Neat. So let's take a look at this. Let's name this section Negotiations of the Bride Price. Okay. So Obierka is, I don't want to say selling, is setting the bride price for his daughter. And it looks a lot like haggling. It really does. So, they haggle for the price using broomsticks. So they give them broomsticks. They look at the broomsticks, they count them, then they go outside, they talk about it, they come back with less broomsticks, and then they add broomsticks until they settle at 20. They haggle for the price of broomsticks. Right. What else did we notice here? Right. Before they even start haggling, the value of the bride is assessed when she makes an appearance while all dolled up. Yep, she's all dolled up. She makes the appearance. They take a look at her, and then they start thinking like, all right, how much is that bride worth? Yeah. I know that there are a lot of you who are cringing right now who really hate this, but remember, we are observing another culture, and I know I haven't been the best at hiding my opinions and thoughts about it, but you really have to consider hey, this is another culture, this is how they do things, because guess what they do next? They're actually going to talk about other cultures. As the men ate and drank palm wine, they talked about the customs of their neighbors. Okay? It was only this morning, said Obierka, that Okonkwo and I were talking about Abame and Aninta. These are other villages. Umofia is one. This is Abame and Aninta, where titled men climb trees and pound fufu for their wives. Okay, so they're comparing their culture to another culture. Their culture, titled men, Ozo, aren't allowed to climb palm trees. But in those cultures, Abame and Aninta, they can climb trees. They are not so privileged that they can't do the work themselves. All their customs are upside down. They do not decide bride price as we do with sticks. They haggle and bargain as if they were buying a goat or a cow in the market. My dudes, this is haggling. Whether you use sticks or not, this is haggling for the price of a woman. How can they even criticize? Okay, maybe the other villages are a little bit more direct. Instead of using broomsticks, they'll be 30 calories. Nah, how about 15? 25. We'll do 20. Sold. That's still haggling, right? That is very bad, said Obierka's eldest brother, but what is good in one place is bad in another. Oh, negotiations of the bride price and other cultural conflicts. Oh man, This is an important quote. I like this quote because this is literally what we've been learning all year. That is very bad, said Obierka's eldest brother. What is good in one place is bad in another place. In Umunso, they do not bargain at all, not even with broomstick. The suitor just goes on bringing bags of cowries until his in-laws tell him to stop. It is a bad custom because it always leads to a quarrel. Yeah, that sounds like a terrible idea. Hey, I want to marry your daughter. Here's $100. How about another 100? How about another 100? Another 100? Another 100? Another 100? All right, that's enough. All right, cool. We're getting married on Saturday. What the heck? Oh man. The world is large, said Okonkwo. I have even heard that in some tribes a man's children belong to his wife and her family. Hold up. Hold up. That cannot be, said Machi. You might as well say that the woman lies on top of the man when they are making the children. Whoa! Whoa, I'm learning a lot about this culture. So apparently, in Umofia, the women and children belong to the man, right? Okonkwo has heard of cultures where they belong to the woman, right? And then it's so crazy. So Machi, he's like, no way. That's insane. It's so crazy. The woman might as well be the one on top, right? That's what he's saying. You might as well say that the woman lies on top of the man when they are making the children. So even like they're talking about sex. They're talking about sex and like the role of the man in sex. And apparently in this culture, like, you know, the man has to do the work. And that's part of being the masculine. That's part of the masculine role. They're hitting all the bases here. Like you've got like bed, like love making. You've got like getting a wife. You've got like just tapping palm trees. There's so much that they're covering, and it's everything that we've been doing since the beginning of the school year. Comparing cultures, they are just as incredulous. They're just as unbelievable as we are when we're like, whoa, Japan doesn't have like a supersized version of a McDonald's soda. Well, that's crazy. I can't imagine asking for a large and it gives me like this much of soda. That's insane. You know, they're reacting the same way. And let me remind you, kids, this is an African tribe in the 1800s. And they have the same perspectives as us today when we consider different cultures. That's why I think this book is so relatable. You know, how many times have I asked you, hey, think of something from another culture that just completely blows your mind? Well, here's something that completely blows their minds. They can't imagine a woman lying on top during sex. Pff, what a novel concept. Don't think too hard about it, kids. You're too young. You're 16. No one here has heard about that thing. The birds and the bees and stuff like that. Talk to your parents. It is like the story of the white men who, they say, are whites like this piece of chalk. Whoa, another cultural conflict. Never heard of white people. This is another important thing. They never heard of white people before. He held up a piece of chalk which every man kept in his obi and with which his guests drew lines on the floor before they ate kola nuts. And these white men, they say, have no toes. What? And have you never seen them? Asked Machi. Have you? Said Obierka. One of them passes here frequently, said Machi. His name is Amadi. Those who knew Amadi laughed. He was a leper, and the polite name for leprosy was the white skin. Oh. Only people they know about are lepers. If you guys don't know what leprosy is, that's a skin disease that basically erodes your skin. And yeah, so I guess, like, you know, if your skin is being constantly eroded, There's no opportunity for the melanin, the stuff, that pigment that makes you darker, for it to set in and actually makes you look white. So they've never heard of white people. Well, hint, hint, kids. We kind of know from history what happens to the African people when the Europeans come to colonize Africa, right? So this is setting us up for the second half of the book, which we won't be there for another. Okay, so I shouldn't say half. So here's the actual book, all right? And in the actual book, I'm gonna find part two. So in the actual book, there's a part two, right? But part two is like, so this smaller part is part two. This is part one. So when we get to part two, we'll be more than halfway through the book. Right now we are at page one. No, this is the end of chapter 8. So chapter 9, this is page 75 out of about 200. So we're almost halfway there. I didn't mean to mislead you, but we're almost halfway through the book, kids. And we are getting somewhere. I hope that you are all thinking of, like, how the culture is and what this means for us and how these people are analyzing their culture. There is a lot there. I'm going to add like pictures and stuff to make sure that this makes sense when we cover it in class on Thursday and Friday. But I do hope that those of you who are with me, if there are any of you at all, have understood or, followed along. If you have any questions, I'm here for it. I'd be happy to answer your questions for you. If you don't get a chance to while you're live or you're watching this in a video replay, please feel free to email me or save your questions for class. That's what we're looking for. Please let us know if there's any way that we can help you understand the story, because as you can see from how excited I am, the story is amazing because it gives us so much insight into not just like the African culture of the Igbo people, but also the way that we look at and analyze culture, the way that we deal with conflicts of culture, that we deal with our own issues with it. And it also gives us characters to relate to, like Okonkwo, a father who means well, but has some serious flaws that he's got to get over. And Nwoye, a boy who's just trying to make his father happy, but has some identity issues that conflict with that. And we're going to see some other characters pop in as well. And the most important characters of all, the Europeans, when they come in part 2. And we'll see what happens when things fall apart. Anyways, seeing no questions in the chat, and it is now getting towards 2:30, almost an hour-long video. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really do hope you have a great day. Whether you are watching this now or watching this, at another time through a video, I hope that you are doing well, that you are doing all right with your classes. And know that if you have any questions about this reading or about your assignments, please feel free to reach out. We're here for it. And I hope that you enjoy the reading. All right. Have a nice afternoon. Take care, everyone.